Unfiltered Vision News. Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Thank you so much for joining me here on this Prayer with Friday. So excited for the new beginning that we're going into. So let's start with our Kids Corner.
A kid with everything money could buy. But there's one thing Jacob couldn't stop doing. He was always worrying about his family. Every morning at breakfast, Jacob would ask his mom, "Are you okay, Mom? Is everything fine?" His mom would smile and say, "Yes, Jacob, I'm fine. Don't worry." But Jacob couldn't help it. Even when his dad went to work, Jacob worried. He called his dad all the time, asking, "Are you sure you're safe at work?" His dad would laugh and say, "Yes, Jacob, I'm safe. Everything's fine." But Jacob wasn't convinced. Jacob's grandpa, who was wise and calm, came to visit. He saw how worried Jacob was and took him outside for a walk in the garden. "Why are you always worrying, Jacob?" his grandpa asked. "You see, Jacob," his grandpa said, "worrying too much won't change anything. But you also need to trust that the people you love can take care of themselves." Jacob tried to worry less and enjoy his time with his family more. He learned that it's okay to care, but it's even better to trust. Sometimes we care so much that we start to worry, but worrying too much only takes away from the joy of being with the people we love. Trusting those we care about can bring peace.
Yes, definitely. And that is something that we need to get back to because, yes, we should not worry. Definitely. It's okay to be concerned, but don't worry, right? And it does take a lot of trust to know that everything is going to be okay. And, we're in that space right now where a lot of people don't have trust in anything, right? It all goes back to God. It really, really does. In trusting. And where is your heart at, right? Because trust me, I'm good at encouraging everybody else. Does everybody else feel like that? You can encourage everybody else. But when it comes to your own person, you're like, oh goodness, is everything going to be okay? Yes, everything's going to be okay. It really is. We all have our crash out moments, but we have to come back to reality and go, you know what? It is going to be okay. And it's okay, in my opinion, to have that honest moment. Don't fake it. Don't be like, yeah, I'm good. And if you're not good, talk about it. Don't stand there like, yeah, I'm great. Really? Are you sure? Because if you're not, that's okay. Because being honest about where you're at gets you to the next level, where somebody might give you a word of encouragement so that you worry less and trust more. And with that, let's get into honoring God with our body. So, God, please guard our mind and our thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So, I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect our ears and help us listen to your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect our eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over our mouths. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help our hands to serve generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. God, please protect our reproductive organs. Help us to honor you, God, with purity. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect our feet as we walk along your path. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. Yes. And if you are just joining us here this morning on Unfiltered Vision News, that is something that we say daily, or we may do something a little bit different. But right now, we are focused on honoring God with our body. And before we close out the show today, we definitely will have our prayer. And that is the whole purpose of Prayer with Friday. We don't have a guest this Friday praying for us, but I'm trying to get some to come on and pray with us and definitely give some encouragement. Now, where I wanted to start today, because yesterday I was asked a question about this meeting with the United Nations where Ghana got into a discussion about slavery and they took a vote on it. I'm trying to bring up the article really quick. There we go. It was a UN resolution urges reparations for slavery's historical wrongs. Now, I'm going to play briefly a commentary video from Lori, I think it's Lori Daniels. Yes, Lori Daniels. And so this is, you know, her account, right? I can't hold her like she was the arbiter of this. She didn't draft it, right? But she is an attorney. She does have her own but she was reading through some of the parts of this document and it was voted on. And her concern was how the vote panned out. And so I'll let you know. So there were 123 votes that were in favor. There were 52 countries that abstained from the vote. So they basically did a no vote on the vote. No, I should say they did. It's not a no vote. They abstained, right? And so that's why I call it. They didn't vote no, but they basically voted not to vote. They did a Pontius Pilate. Basically, they washed their hands and said this isn't something that we're gonna even discuss. If you guys want to vote on it, that's great, but we're not. We're not voting. And then there were three countries that voted no. Those three countries are Argentina, Israel, and the United States. Now, she doesn't get into the why they didn't vote because everybody does have their reasons of why they wouldn't vote for this. Okay. But she does bring up some concerns, different communities, maybe different perspectives. So I just wanted to tee that up. So as you're listening, right, you get a little bit like, oh, okay, right? Because this is all subjective, in my opinion. The United Nations, and we'll get into more of even why they exist, okay? Because I know a lot of times people are like, why do we even listen to them anyway? The biggest point of them being together anyway was after World War II is to basically have a place where dignitaries, representatives from all the different countries could come together and say, hey, these are the issues we're having with this country, or this is where we're at. And it's basically coming together to say, okay, globally, Everybody's good or everybody's not good, right? But it's not supposed to necessarily dictate policy in these other countries. It's pretty much a forum where you can bring grievances if there's grievances and have formal discussions, right, in a formal setting. So we didn't get back to another World War II. Okay. So again, just teeing it up for you guys. So here we go.
Chattel enslavement of Africans, slavery, and the transatlantic slave trade as the most inhumane and enduring injustice against humanity. Now, some of the European nations was a little upset about this. They was like, well, why we got to say it was the most enduring? We don't have, well, they didn't say it in that voice. Why do we have to say it was the most enduring of all the disasters that befall humankind? There were other people who suffered, other people who went through things. Why must this be the most grave thing? And the answer to that is because none of them other atrocities created a multi-century intergenerational system of oppression that we are still living with today. It shifted time. It shifted paradigms. It shifted capacity. It made African people unhuman in the eyes of the rest of the world, and that system still persists today. So that's the answer to that question. Then when it goes to number 2, this resolution declares the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. Keep in mind, prior to the enslavement of African people, we did not have chattel slavery. We had regular slavery. Now, regular slavery was still slavery. It's some bullshit. I ain't gonna hold you. But regular slavery was something that was happening all around the world. If you got captured in a war, you were gonna be enslaved to the winning group, and you were gonna have to work for them. You would be able to work your way up through society. Eventually, many people were able to buy themselves free or marry into the family and become subsumed into the group of people that had colonized you or won the war. Now, obviously, you probably didn't want that. You didn't want to lose the war, but you were still a human being. You still retained your rights to humanity. You were never considered property, and your children's children in perpetuity were not going to be born into the same state of enslavement that you were. That all changed with chattel slavery. Chattel slavery was brand new. Ain't nobody had heard of it before. So the people on the continent of Africa, the people all throughout the world who had already been engaging in a practice known as enslavement, which for many people would be more akin to what the Europeans were doing when it came to the feudal system, and you had the serfs living on the land of the nobles and the landlords, which is where we get the phrase landlords. It was a very different type of slavery because the enslavement of African people vis-a-vis the transatlantic slave trade and the slave trade of African people into Arab nations, that was chattel. You lose your humanity. You are rendered rights-less. You have no rights that anyone is bound to respect. You have no ability to resist. You have no ability to, in fact, when you resist, they say you're mentally ill and will give you diseases that they made up like drapetomania, right? So there's a fundamental difference in what happened during the enslavement of African people. Let's get back to this because I want to make sure that you all are able to see it, because we got more to get to. All right, I'm gonna have to do this in 2 parts. Okay, then the third thing is that it emphasizes the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity by reason of the definitive break in world history, scale, duration, systemic nature, brutality, and enduring consequences that continue to structure the lives of all people through racialized regimes of labor, property, and capital. This resolution recognizes that the trafficking of Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans constitute violations of jus cogens, which is complementary law. Like everybody law basically know this shit was fucked up. And we didn't have to wait until 2026 to know it. Y'all knew it was fucked up back then because you had entire legal systems that were created to show.
I do apologize. She uses a lot of profanity. So for those that have children that are listening, I do apologize.
Show you how to punish black people for resisting, how to punish the non-black people who were trying to help black people resisting. So we knew that you knew, we knew that you knew, that we would know that you knew back then that this shit was fugazi. And so you don't get to say that the law of the time was very different. That's what the Netherlands tried to say. They were like, well, we believe that the transatlantic slave trade and the trafficking and chattelization of Africans was terrible, but we cannot say there was no international law that prevented it at the time. So is it really a violation of international law? Yes, bitch, it is. Because y'all motherfuckers created international systems of oppression. Let's get back to the document. The resolution reaffirms its collective recognition of the profound and lasting impacts of the abhorrent regimes of slavery and colonialism and the persistence of racial discrimination and neocolonialism on Africans and people of African descent, and how this continues to cause immense suffering, cultural disruption, economic exploitation, emotional trauma, and unending discrimination endured by Africans and people of African descent throughout history. Number 6, the resolution affirms the importance of addressing historical wrongs affecting Africans and people of African descent in a manner that promotes justice, human rights, dignity, and healing, and emphasizes that claims for reparations represent a concrete step towards remedying historical wrongs against Africans and people of African descent. Number 7, the resolution notes that in various historical contexts, reparations and other forms of redress have been provided in respect to other grave crimes committed against particular groups, reflecting the principle under international law that international wrongful acts entail a duty of reparation, and notes with concern that no comprehensive reparatory framework has yet been realized for the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans, despite its scale, duration.
So I want to pause right there. So that particular section, as it's stated, there were other groups that have been acknowledged. Now, did they point out those specific groups? No. But it has it in there, right? Can we assume that they're talking about the Holocaust? We don't know because it wasn't pointed out. I just wanted to just pause right there.
And enduring consequences. Next page, number 8. The resolution calls upon member states individually and collectively to engage in inclusive, good faith dialogue on reparatory justice, including a full and formal apology, measures of restitution, compensation, rehabilitation, satisfaction.
Okay. All right. You heard the word compensation in there. I just want you to hold that word as she moves forward with her take on this.
Guarantees of non-repetition and changes to laws, programs, and services to address racism and systemic discrimination. Number 9, it calls for the prompt and unhindered restitution of cultural properties, objects d'art, monuments, museum pieces. They said, bring us all our shit back. Museum pieces, artifacts, manuscripts, and documents, and national archives that are of spiritual, historical, and cultural or other value to countries of origin without charge, and urges the strengthening of international cooperation on reparations for any damage done, and recognizing that this leads to the promotion of national culture and the enjoyment of cultural rights by present and future generations. Number 10, it encourages member states to support initiatives aimed at reparatory justice and sustainable development for affected peoples, including consideration of contributions to reparations-related programs established by relevant regional organizations. Number 11, ooh, Lord, I forgot. Okay, I might not get through all of it. Damn it. Okay,
The word contributions is also brought up.
I'm gonna try. All right, number 11. Resolution requests the Secretary General, in coordination with the United Nations system, including the UN Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization and the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, to strengthen coordination on remembrance, education, research, capacity building related to the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans and its legacies. Number 12, the resolution encourages member states to make voluntary contributions to support coordination efforts within the United Nations system on remembrance, education, research, capacity building related to the trafficking of enslaved Africans, racialized chattel enslavement of Africans and its enduring legacies, and also encourages member states to cooperate with relevant initiatives of the African Union through capacity building, technical training, and support for cultural diplomacy projects of mutual interest. Number 13, it invites the African Union, the Caribbean Community, the Organization of American States, and other relevant regional and sub-regional organizations to collaborate with member states and United Nations entities in developing frameworks for dialogue.
Mentioned American states. Again, there's just some things I want you to hold because I know she's reading through it very fast.
Cooperation and action on reparatory justice and reconciliation. Number 14, it encourages member states to promote comprehensive educational programs, memorialization initiatives, and scholarly research on slavery, the trafficking of enslaved Africans, and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans and their consequences, including through curricula, museums, heritage sites, and public awareness campaigns. It requests the Secretary General to submit to the General Assembly at its 82nd session a report on the actions taken by states in implementation of the present resolution, including progress made in remembrance, education, and dialogue on reparatory justice. Number 16, finally, we made it, decides to include in the provisional agenda of its 82nd session the item entitled Commemoration of the Abolition of Slavery and the Transatlantic Slave Trade, to consider the report of the Secretary General. All of you are able to pull this document and read it. The reason I wanted to go through it is because we got to get ahead of the misinformation and the disinformation campaigns that are already out. And they're out in abundance. And the reason this matters is because when you have people who say things like, these Africans just gonna take our reparations money, money, said by people who are already actively pushing this line online and in their own respective spaces. Number one, if you are a part of a group that has declared that you are by lineage not connected to any other branch of the African tree, you have said that you are in alignment with America. This is a group that was very proud that, and I'm talking about foundational Black Americans, apparently of which I am one by birth, so, okay. But if that is your perspective and you do not believe that the United Nations as a body has any impact on you and that you are American, you ain't no African, why are you concerned with what African people are doing at the UN? It doesn't concern you, remember? Because you said this wasn't your fight. You said you wanted reparations from America, and that was it. Everybody else should go somewhere else. So they went somewhere else. Why are you mad, friend? Why are you mad? Now, to be clear, there is concern, and I've seen it already. This is a money grab by the Ghanaians. Now, what's interesting about this is the rest of the world's interactions and responses to this have been glorious. It's been very interesting. It's been more muted here in the United States, not getting a whole lot of attention, mainly because America voted no in alignment with Israel and Argentina. But I want you all to take a listen, because this was a question that was posed to the members of the Ghanaian delegation. Is this going to be a money grab? Are you Ghanaians just here to take our UN money? But again, if you're American, it's not supposed to count because it doesn't work for you. Whatever. Let's listen to what the Foreign Affairs Minister, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, says as he's talking about what this resolution is actually for, because it ain't about a money grab. I read everything the resolution is supposed to accomplish. I showed you on my screen. So if anybody telling you, they're just trying to get our money, baby, you ain't got no money in there. You damn sure ain't got no reparations money here in the United States. There's no money on any table that anybody else is trying to grab away from you. But just because I know y'all think I'm a tether, I'm actually a foundational Black American. We're going to get to that in a minute. I think that's hilarious. Pay attention to what the Foreign Affairs Minister had to say. Let's hear it.
We have, in this resolution, talked about frameworks which will put in place that will take care of the consequences. We all know that the consequences of the transatlantic slave trade has been the lack of opportunity, discrimination, the degradation of people of color. So we have said, let's have frameworks that will serve as...
How did we get from Africans to people of color? Just hold that.
Endowment funds to support education, to support empowerment, to support...
Endowment funds. Okay.
For skills training, capital for entrepreneurs, and all of that. And we have made clear that African leaders or Caribbean leaders are not looking for money. It goes against our conscience to seek to profit from this. We don't want any payments made to us directly. We are talking about courses to deal with the structural inequalities.
Come on.
And we are also talking about the return of artifacts to the continent. It's all in the resolution. There are thousands of artifacts from Egypt all the way to the Ashanti Kingdom in Ghana. Those artifacts should not be returned on piecemeal as and when those who are in custody of those artifacts are in a good mood. So we have outlined what must be done and to whom these redress should be addressed to. So again, it is totally wrong for a claim to be made that there is no clarity about who benefits from reparatory justice.
I'm so glad that was made clear. Aren't you? I'm so glad that was made clear, because I really want us to be very clear about what this moment signifies. The Ghanaians were able to pull together the international community, minus the whites and the apartheidists. They were able to pull together the international community to agree that the trafficking of African people, the chattelization of the enslavement system, are the gravest crimes against humanity. And then they provided, 16? Let me go back to the document. I want to make sure I'm citing the right number. 16 courses, pathways through which reparatory justice should be achieved. Did any of you hear me read anything about a check to any nation, to any people? You did not hear that, because that is not what is happening. And so it's very important that we have clear understanding and that we have clarity of the record. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have this conversation. Now, yesterday, while I was at, after the vote, I was able to, and I was so honored to host a global watch party. There were people from South America, from Caribbean America, from African nations, from across the globe who were watching the votes as they came in, watching the arguments that the nation states led, and were then, after the vote, engaging in dialogue and discourse. And I was introduced to so many brilliant, amazing Black people from all across the planet, African people. And I'm saying African as in the inclusive sense, the way that President Mahama of Ghana said yesterday. He said, listen, when I say, or 2 days ago at the African Burial Ground, he said, when I say African, it is inclusive. It means African and people of African descent. But it was so beautiful to see how African people all around the planet are organizing and thinking, and then ain't nobody arguing over, they took my $100,000 check. They want systemic change. We want systemic and structural shifts in the paradigms that broke the world and broke the sense of time and humanity, and this is what this resolution is designed to do. So after the watch party, which I was again privileged to host, I was also a panelist at the African Union mission to the UN and had some things to say about this moment. And I'm going to play for you now. Yeah, we got time. I'm going to play for you now. It's a lengthy clip, but it's important that we understand what it is that this signifies. I'm not going to play the full clip. I mean, I'll let you know when to pull it. But it is also important that we're aware of what this moment holds in terms of potential. And so I'm going to play this clip for you. Amina, hold on. Let me pull it up so we can get the clip ready to go because I want the people to hear the clip. So we're going to, oh, damn it. Darn it. Hold on. Let me do this differently because I'm not in my system that allows me to play clips without commercials. I'm logged into a different account. Y'all just going to have to bear with the system because y'all know that the system be systeming and my team be teaming. But frankly, it's what it is. So I want you all to listen to this. Amina, here we go. All right, here we go. I'm about to share my screen. Hold on. Amina's like, I got the clip. I'm ready to hit the button. And we're going to hit the button right now. Let's hear it.
Nkichi Taifa, I just want to say how grateful I am to you, Jasmine, all the work that has gone in, that everyone has engaged in. And while I am technically a commissioner on the New York State Reparations Commission, I'm speaking today in my personal capacity. And we do not speak on behalf of the commission. My fellow commissioner is here, and so you will confirm for all of us that that is the case. I have to say that today left me very moved. The work that we do at the Center for Law and Social Justice at the Medgar Evers College. We are a racial justice law center founded in 1986 with the mission of figuring out how to use the law to make the lives of African New Yorkers better. And when we say African, we mean Pan-African. We got to be clear and specific in this community because we recognize that the definitions and words mean things. And so we've been doing this work to repair our community vis-a-vis voting rights and voter protections, vis-a-vis policing, violence prevention work, vis-a-vis educational equity work, vis-a-vis housing work. And all of that really is in an effort to contribute to the repair of the community that we are going to be charged with. What happened today was so dynamic and so powerful. And I want to say thank you, especially to Dr. Pinache for the words that she left us today, recognizing the intergenerational nature of the crime and the intergenerational nature of the harm that was inflicted, and to be a part of the watch party today, where we were able to hear from people in Brazil, in Colombia, in Ecuador, all of whom identify as part of the Pan-African community, hearing from people in Ghana, being able to...
Because I can't play the whole thing, but she's very specific about the Pan-African community. And for those of you that may not know a little bit about Pan-Africanism, it was, or I should say it is, I can't say it's an ideology nor movement, but I will say it is more so a group setting to say, okay, we're all African. We're all, you know what I'm saying? We're all in. They talk about the diaspora, right? Pan-Africanism, bringing in Africans here in America, the Trail of Tears, right? So just bringing in everybody on inclusive. Now, Black Americans bought into this in the 70s, hence my name, right? And a lot of people are like, Ashaki, where does that come from? Well, my name is from South Africa. It's from a tribe in South Africa. Ashaki means beautiful. Noni means gift of God. So I am the beautiful gift of God. That is what my name means. My mother at the time, her gynecologist, gave her a book of names because she said, I want my daughter's name to mean beautiful gift of God. So he gave her a book of names. She was able to find the translation of my name. The translation of my name is Ashaki Noni. Okay, so we're there. But at the time, my mom was, Farrakhan, he was in South Bend, Indiana, and he was speaking, and so she was going there. But again, the Pan-African movement was very large during that time. People were dashikis. Jesse Jackson was a part of that movement. Um, but bred from that is where you get people coming from Negro to African American, right? That's where that advent happened. And there are still people that subscribe to it. Now, recent years, there was a shift and a parting of ways because the Africans that were welcomed here in the 60s, they basically said, well, you black people that are here, why aren't you doing enough? And they were given preference over us. And instead of using their ability to say, okay, wait a minute, why are you putting us over these American blacks that are already here? We should be all wanted together. We were called Akata, and they separated themselves from us. No, I'm being a little brief because it does take a minute to explain this. And so they separated themselves from us and put themselves above Black Americans. They did. I'm just telling you. So when that Pan African movement happened to say, hey, we're all one, there were some Black Americans that were like, wait a minute, how are we all one, but you're still above us and still putting us down? And so now you have this advent of foundational Black Americans. We're like, we're not dealing with you Africans anymore. We're done. Do your thing. We'll do our thing. And we're going to stand shoulder to shoulder, right? Because it's one thing to stand shoulder to shoulder and be like, yeah, I know where you're coming from. You know where I'm coming from. Respect it. Then saying, okay, let's be all homogenous and one. Because the problem is when we try to do the homogenous in one thing, you still want to be up one ticker and put the rest of us down. It is what it is. I'm sorry. I'm just telling you. There are people from the African community that will tell their children, don't deal with Black Americans. You stay away from them. To this day. I'm just letting you know. So all melanated people are not on the same page. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's part of your problem. You guys aren't all on one page. People are tribal and idealistic by nature. In this conversation, Americans just want to be Americans. Africans, you're doing your thing. A lot of the language I noticed was language that people were talking about in 2022 when reparations really got some traction and movement and everybody started talking about it. Reparative justice. Yeah, those are things that I heard people who actually came up with those terms. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I see you. I see the linguistics and what's happening. Now, as much as they want to say, okay, this is not about money, you can say that, but when you use the word compensation, that's money. You want to be compensated for what? Why is that even in there? So let me see if I can pull the General Assembly document. Found it. All right, let's pull this up on the screen. I know there's going to be a little bit of delay as I'm going through this. Let me, okay. Let me find it really quick. And thank you guys again for joining me here this morning on Unfiltered Vision News. And I don't want to stay here too long because there's some other things we got to get to. Oops. Okay. So there is here on the screen, as you see it, reaffirming, right, that under international law, including the principles of the Articles of Responsibility of States or internationally wrongful acts, states, okay, who are these states, bear a responsibility for internationally wrongful acts and have an obligation to cease the act of it of it is continuing to offer appropriate assurances and guarantees of non repetition. Again, non repetition is something that I heard back in 2022. It's 2026 now. So they have co opted a lot of what foundational Black Americans at that time, a term that I had just come across, were talking about 4 years ago. See, a lot of times people don't talk about the advent and historical references to some of these words, but they matter. As Lori Daniels said, words matter, right? If the circumstances so require and to make full reparation for the injury caused, which may take the form of restitution, compensation, and satisfaction, either singly or in combination. Now, when people look at restitution, okay, restitution, restoration, that means fixing something that was broken. Okay, so if the educational system was broken, let's fix it. Makes sense. Compensation is what it is. Compensation is monetary. That's money. I mean, it is what it is. So you can't say that they're not asking for money when the word compensation is in here. Are we bartering? Is that the compensation? What are we talking about? Compensation is what it is. It means money. Sorry. I'm just, stop that. I don't like it when people try to, talk too fast and mince words. So, I have my own take on what is happening. And personally, I am glad that the United States said no. I'm glad that they said no. Because if this is about Africans truly saying, hey, we want acknowledgement, okay, get your acknowledgement. And other people saying, this is the worst. That's subjective. You're using subjective language to something that really happened. Now, if you wanted to say chattel slavery happened, this is the places that it happened in, and we want acknowledgement, it's a little bit different. But you want to use language that can be subjective. Now, some people could say, well, the Holocaust was the worst one. That's still subjective. There may be people that agree or disagree with that. I'm just putting it out there. It is what it is. So the resolution formally declares trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans. Interesting that they're using chattel enslavement because they weren't using these words 4 years ago, but they're using it now. Did chattel slavery happen on the continent of Africa? Is the question. We'll see, right? As the gravest crime against humanity. That's subjective. Because can it be a crime against humanity? Absolutely. Is it the gravest? Are we in the struggle Olympics right now? Right now, we're in the struggle Olympics. Because now it's like, well, how is yours more important than mine? And how is mine more important than yours? If the crime happened against humanity, the crime happened. The word gravest is subjective. It is, right? Citing its unprecedented scale, brutality, duration, and enduring legacies, such as structural racism, inequalities, and intergenerational harm, which definitely American Negroes completely understand. But understand when Africans came over here, not prior to 1965, because there were people that were sold by Africa to America and then brought here. That happened, but Africans did that. They were bought. Not everybody was stolen. They were stolen by their own people. Those are just facts. It's there. Now, yeah, this is I don't know. This might be an inflammatory conversation for some of y'all. Sorry. And Spud says, how do you want systemic change without any laws on the books? I know, right? And Grady says, Rawi, his buzz says, gave me some bullet points. It says, did she just say this is not a concern of Black Americans? How, when they're complicit in the sale of us, they need money to pay us? Yeah, it's like I said, it's a very interesting conversation because on the one hand, she says this is not about money, but on the other hand, I just read and showed you in the documents is compensation. Compensation is money. I'm not weird. Just saying. Now, it condemns these acts, links them to broader impacts of slavery, colonialism, neocolonialism, and promotes frameworks for reparatory justice. Again, these are terms that were coined in 2022. And they're making it seem like they just came up with this language. They've been working on this for a long time. Right? This includes education, remembrance, research, restitution of cultural artifacts, dialogue and apologies, restitution, compensation, and systemic changes, while clarifying it's not primarily about direct cash payments, but empowerment, skills training, and addressing inequalities. The host corrects misconceptions. It's broader than just the transatlantic trade, also covering other African trafficking, right? Celebrates the overwhelming global support and highlights its significance for Pan African unity and international discourse on historical justice. Here's how the votes broke out. 123 countries voted in favor in agreeing that it was the greatest atrocity, right? They agreed that it was the gravest crime against humanity, right? Now, 52 abstained, which means they were like, we're not voting on this. 3 voted against it. It was the United States, Israel, and Argentina. But she never really gets into why they voted that way. She just assumes why they voted that way. Also, in her dialogue, she's described those countries, the ones that voted against, the no's, as apartheid or apartheid adjacent in the host commentary. It also mentions reactions within affected communities. Now, this is overall. I said, says, does the no vote from the United States make it apartheid or apartheid adjacent? Because I just want to know factually, not hyperbolically. Let's get your feelings out of it, right? Let's just have a conversation. What does their no stand for? Because again, some of these votes, I should say, and especially this one, can be subjective. It can be. It can be subjective. So let's find out the no. So the United States no vote on this non-binding, again, UN General Assembly resolution does not make it apartheid or apartheid adjacent. Okay. So the resolution was adopted on March 25th, declares the trafficking of enslaved Africans as racialized chattel enslavement as the greatest crime against humanity due to its scale, brutality, duration, and lasting legacies. It condemns these acts, links them to broader impacts of slavery, colonialism, and promotes reparatory justice, including apologies, education, blah, blah, blah. So we got there, the 3 no votes. Now, the U.S. official reasons for voting against this. The U.S. Deputy Ambassador Dan Negrea explained the position clearly. The U.S. condemns the historic wrongs of the transatlantic slave trades. She doesn't say that in her video, but this is the reasons, right? However, it rejects creating a hierarchy among greatest crimes against humanity, arguing that labeling one as the gravest diminishes victims of other atrocities, which he brings up the Holocaust, which is a key concern for Israel. Right? So again, why are we in the struggle Olympics if you want to be recognized? You can say we have a crime against humanity that we want acknowledged. When you pose it and frame it that way, they'd be like, okay, we can't say that it's not a crime against humanity. But when you use adjectives, you get into the struggle Olympics. Because again, the Holocaust, they can say, well, that was one of the gravest, right? That we saw. Because the people that were of Jewish descent that lived in Germany became pariahs to the point where they put them in concentration camps and did all types of horrific things to them after they were freed people. They weren't, you know, taken from other places and brought in for slavery. They literally, on the ground that they were living in, became targets of hatred ethnically. It was an ethnic cleansing. It wasn't based on race because they don't play the race game in Germany. It was ethnic. It was very specific to people of Jewish ethnic descent. And that's why they were targeted. They weren't targeted because of the melanin in their skin. It was a totally different situation. Horrific. Don't ever do it again, right? Don't ever do it again on the planet. Not right. People's minds were not right when they were doing the things they were doing. In the name of what? In the name of what? I think that's what makes the Holocaust a very interesting time, I should say, in our global history. Because you targeted people based on their ethnicity. Whereas with chattel slavery, it was more labor and abuse, right? They abused the labor as if these people were animals, even a step below animals, because they treated the animals better than they did the human beings that were working for them. So they were two different situations. So to say that this is the gravest or that's the gravest, again, it puts us in the struggle Olympics. And we shouldn't be there. We don't want this to happen again, right? Because it shouldn't be happening, period. But let's read on. So it does not recognize a legal right to reparations for historical acts that were not illegal under international law at the time they occurred, because they weren't illegal at that time. They're deemed illegal now in some areas, even though people are still doing it illegally. We'll get to that. But at the time, it wasn't illegal. At the time, it was practice to do this. Africans were selling their own people into slavery. There were also people Jewish descent. Yeah, there's some of that in there too, that were selling people, right? There were a lot of people involved in this type of slavery. The chattel slavery that she's referring to, that Lori Daniels referring to, that is referred to in this UN document, was completely different than other slavery things going on. But again, if you're trying to narrow it down and say, okay, this particular act, you want the United States to acknowledge something that was legal at the time, because it was legal. They were acting in capacity that was okay. Now, we don't talk about the people who were against this here. They don't have a voice. It's really weird, because there were people, I'm trying to get their names, abolitionists that were here in the United States, and they didn't agree with slavery, and a lot of them lost their lives disagreeing with slavery, and they fought and fought and fought until it was ended. We don't talk about those people. I'm just saying. Now, it says it objects to using past wrongs as leverage to reallocate modern resources to distantly related people or nations today. Now, that's the argument that we are having in the United States, right? But there are, and I won't get into it too much here, but there are resources that were set aside for Black Americans here in this country. They're just not being applied because they turned the word from Black Americans to minorities. They're like, well, you can't just get this, even though it was set aside for you. Other people need to be entitled to this. We do not have proper representation as Black Americans. But again, side note, keep that in your pocket. So it objects to past wrongs as leverage to reallocate modern resources. Okay. And practical concerns, unclear recipients of reparatory justice, new UN reporting mandates that cost money amid US funding disputes, and the UN's core role being peace security rather than advancing specific reparations agendas. That's why they voted no. Because right now, to vote along with this, you are getting into an ideological situation. It is the way it's been presented, because you're not talking about crimes against humanity. You're saying it's the gravest. You're using hyperbolic language to explain something that, yes, did happen and did occur, and you want acknowledgement for it. But this compensatory justice that you're seeking, the United States is like, we're not going to be a part of that, because that's not why we're here. That's not why we're here as the United Nations. We're here to make sure that we're not warring against each other. And if we have an alt against another country, that we have a forum and a place to discuss it. That's the whole point and purpose of this organization as it stands. And to start to try to put in ties to other concerns, it's not the appropriate, right? It's just not the appropriate venue. And it's not. Sorry. You can bring it up if you want to. But that's why the United States is not participating. Since these are standard legal, historical, and policy objections seen in similar debates, European countries mostly abstained for overlapping reasons like rejecting retroactive liability and hierarchies of suffering. What apartheid actually means: apartheid refers specifically to the system of institutionalized racial segregation, discrimination, and white minority rule enforced by the South African government from 1948 to the 1990s. It involved past laws, forced removals, denial of voting rights, citizenship to the black majority, separate inferior facilities and education, and violent suppression, all explicitly based on race to maintain dominance. Now, apartheid adjacent is a rhetorical extension sometimes used by activists to describe policies or states that they view as racially oppressive or analogous Israel's policies towards Palestinians, which Israel and supporters strongly reject as self-defense, security measures, not racial supremacy. They can't play the race game. This is ethnicity when you're going from Israel to Palestinians. It's ethnicity. It's not race, but people like to get involved in the race game. Let's see why the label doesn't apply here. A single diplomatic vote on a symbolic, non-binding UN resolution about historical events from centuries ago has no connection to establishing or maintaining a domestic system of racial segregation and minority rule. The U.S. is a multiracial democracy with black population of 13 to 14%, including descendants of enslaved people, immigrants, etc., where slavery was abolished in 1865 via the 13th Amendment, followed by the civil rights laws, voting rights, affirmative action debates, and ongoing political participation across racial lines. Black Americans vote, hold office, serve in the military, judiciary, and participate in the economy, none of which matches apartheid's legal disenfranchisement and separation. Because there was a time during Reconstruction where everybody was living pretty peacefully. I mean, you have disagreements here and there, but we had black representation. People were in Congress. Then, after John Adams, and he decided to pardon the Confederate Army when they were released, they got into the judicial system. and they became police officers. And then you saw the Jim Crow laws after Reconstruction. That's where a lot of these harms started coming back in. They people that were in places of Congress and those different places, they were removed by vote, saying they no longer had the same rights that they were afforded. So you were given rights in a country that says all men are created equal, but you still have to have civil rights because you were treated like animals. You go through Reconstruction, and then roughly 20 years later, you become an animal again. How does that work? And that's the conversation that a lot of people are having. Like, how do we get back to that point? How do we go in reverse? In the UN, they're talking about centuries ago, from something at the time international law was okay, and nobody did anything about it till later, till like 1981 to be specific. So disagreeing with reparations frameworks is a substantive disagreement about law, history, causation of modern outcomes, incentives, and practicality, not evidence of supporting racial supremacy or segregation today. Many countries, including former slave trading European powers, abstained or had reservations for similar principled or pragmatic reasons, framing a no vote as proof of apartheid is a rhetorical tactic that conflates policy disagreement with moral condemnation of an entire society system. It echoes broader activist language that equates opposition to certain global South-led initiatives or identity-based claims with racism without engaging the stated legal objections. Okay, so the U.S. has its own complex history with slavery, like I brought up, Jim Crow, and racial inequality. The legitimate debates about legacies, progress, and remedies, but a UN vote rejecting retroactive international reparations obligations and hierarchies of historical crimes does not transform the country into or adjacent to a system like apartheid in South Africa. That's an overreach that prioritizes narrative over precise definitions and evidence. So I said, can you provide me the link to the documents? I got the links, I got the documents, I showed you the document. So is slavery still prevalent today outside of human trafficking? Because, they do have sex slaves and for different things like that. It says yes. Slavery in various forms remains prevalent today, even when setting aside the common category of human trafficking. The most authoritative global data comes from international labor organizations, the ILO, Walk Free, and the International Organization for Migration, IOM. Their latest joint global estimates of modern slavery, covering data up to 2021, indicate that approximately 50 million people were living in modern slavery on any given day. This breaks down to roughly 28 million in forced labor and 28 million in forced labor and 22 million in forced marriage. Remember, she was talking about people who were married and then, yeah. So the number rose by about 10 million since 2016. Modern slavery is an umbrella term for situations where people are exploited and cannot refuse or leave due to threats, violence, coercion, deception, or abuse of power. It includes legally defined concepts like forced labor, debt bondage, slavery, and slavery like practices, and forced marriage. So, human trafficking usually involves the recruitment, transportation, and harboring of people for exploitation. Okay, now let's keep going. So, important distinctions from historical chattel slavery, legal status, traditional ownership based chattel slavery, where people are legally bought, sold as property, is illegal everywhere and has been formally abolished in all countries. Mauritania, and I think that, I'm not sure where that's located, was last in 1981. So, 1981 was not that long ago. Okay. So, however, it persists illegally in pockets, especially descendant based system. So it's still happening. Okay. Is it still happening? Is it not happening? Or are we not really doing our homework? Like, where's this conversation coming from? Because in my opinion, if you're going to have this conversation, you have to have the whole conversation. You can't leave certain parts out because it's convenient for you. And to me, this is a convenient situation. Either we're dealing with slavery or we're not. We still have to acknowledge the fact that some of this stuff is still happening right now. It is. Scale and nature. Today's issues are often hidden in ordinary work or family structures rather than open markets. They are driven by poverty, conflict, migration vulnerabilities, discrimination, weak governance, and demand for cheap labor and goods. Not the same as all bad labor conditions, right? Forced labor requires coercion and inability to leave freely. Poor wages or bad jobs alone do not qualify. Okay? So the problem has worsened in recent years due to conflicts, climate impacts, economic shocks like COVID-19, and migration pressures. No country is immune, though government responses vary widely. So even though it's not as widely practiced as it was back in the 1400s, 1500s, where international law said, yes, you can go and buy some humans and bring them over to work. What's the problem? It's frowned upon. It's like, no, you can't do that. But it's not that it isn't still happening. It is. It's just, where is it happening is the question, right? So I say, can you understand, can you briefly explain the purpose of the United Nations and when the United States joined? So the purpose of the United Nations, right, is to maintain international peace and security, develop friendly relations among nations, promote respect for human rights, fundamental freedoms, encourage international cooperation on solving economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems. So they might consider this a humanitarian problem, right? The famous opening of the preamble captures the spirit. We, the peoples of the United Nations, determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. That's in the preamble. So it was designed after the failures of the League of Nations and the devastation of World War II, with the goal of fostering global cooperation, tolerance, justice under international law, and better standards of life. The United States joined and is a founding member. The UN Charter was signed in San Francisco, June 26, 1945. The U.S. Senate ratified it overwhelmingly on July 28, 1945, a 9-2 vote. President Harry Truman signed the ratification on August 8, 1945, making the U.S. the first country to complete the process. The UN officially came into existence on October 24, 1945, when enough countries, including the 5 permanent Security Council members, had ratified the charter. The U.S. has been a member since the very beginning and serves as one of the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council with veto power, because we're one of the founding members, right? So in short, the UN exists primarily to prevent another world war and promote peaceful international cooperation. And the United States helped create it and joined in 1945. So I said, has the UN tried to act as a secondary government to the United States to dictate policy, for example, Agenda 2030? Okay, this is no. The United Nations has not tried to act as a secondary government that can dictate U.S. policy. The UN is an international form created by sovereign states, okay, including the U.S. as a founding member. Its General Assembly resolutions, including Agenda 2030, are non-binding and explicitly voluntary. The document itself states that implementation must respect national policies, priorities, and sovereignty, with the follow-up being country-led and based on each nation's own data and decisions. Okay, because a lot of people will come back to 2030 and it's like, well, why are we even participating in this when some of this doesn't apply to us? Because it's voluntary and we're a part of the United Nations. We're a founding charter member. Okay, whether we like it or not, we are. It was adopted. But like all things that can be adopted, it can be removed, revoked, and make laws to never participate in it unless it's viably necessary that we speak or rewritten, right? Or we just make demands and say, whatever you discuss in the UN agenda, if it is not about peace, we don't want to hear about it. I mean, I'm just saying, it's the United States. We can be like, no, we don't like it. And we have. We have. Okay. So in March 2025, the US explicitly rejected and denounced the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that's the SDGs, calling them a form of soft global governance inconsistent with American sovereignty. The US stated it would no longer reaffirm them as routine policy. Okay, so that happened. But if you get another president that agrees with it, it'll be back. That's why I keep slipping back and forth. Because I know people are like, well, why does it? That's why. Under President Trump, he's like, we're rejecting all of that. People are like, we're rejecting all of that. But there is a strong force that have gone along with it. Sorry, I'm spending so much time on this, but this is important because this is kind of why we are in some of the nonsense that we're in right now. So the UN has no enforcement power over U.S. domestic or foreign policy. It cannot pass laws, impose taxes, or override the U.S. Constitution, Congress, or President. The U.S. can ignore, abstain from, or vote against UN action it disagrees with, as seen in many votes, including recent ones on reparations or sustainability reaffirmations. Okay, it's all voluntary. Still voluntary. It's more of, like I said, it's more of a group conversation. Hey, we're not going to do bad things to one another. And if we are in some type of conflict, let's at least have a forum to talk about it with one another. Let's at least come here. But it's when you get into these ideological conversations, and Agenda 2030 is an ideological conversation. The harmful resolution, in my opinion, that happened in the United Nations and it's affected globally is the replacement migration that everybody was like, oh, that's just a fallacy. No, it's not. And the one country that's not on there, and I'm going to show you guys, is China. China's not on there. North Korea is. Japan's not on there. North Korea is. Interesting. But most of the other countries that are listed, they're European. And they said in the replacement migration that people were going to be coming from other Middle Eastern countries to take over and repopulate these Western countries. And it's happened. Yeah. So at the time of the formation of the United Nations, were there any wealthy families working with the federal government to establish the UN? Yes. At the time, the UN's formation in 1945, certain wealthy American families, most notably the Rockefeller family, collaborated with the U.S. federal government in supporting the establishment and location of the United Nations. So they provided significant private support. J.D. Rockefeller donated the land, about 17 to 18 acres along the East River in Manhattan, for the permanent UN headquarters in New York. This $8.5 million gift, roughly 83 to 85 million in today's dollars, was arranged through his son Nelson Rockefeller and was crucial in securing New York as the site after the locations were considered or rejected. The donation occurred shortly after the charter's adoption, but helped solidify the UN's presence in the United States. So Nelson Rockefeller, who served in the Roosevelt Truman administrations, including as Assistant Secretary of State for Latin American Affairs, actively supported the UN's creation and advocated for regional pacts within its framework. He attended the 1945 San Francisco conference. So no conflict of interest there. Yeah, nothing to see here. Keep it moving. What? Oh, it was just a donation of land. Uh-huh. And you're already in the government. Yeah. In my opinion, that's called paid influence. But we all know that's happening. And those are the things that people have a problem with our government. It's that paid influence. It's that right there. It's that twisting that knife, right? So the Rockefeller Foundation had previously supported internationalist efforts, including aspects of the earlier League of Nations and continued involvement in global institutions. Now, some people know about the Rockefellers, some people don't. They're not the best bunnies in the bunch. We'll just put it that way. Other elite networks, such as members of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR, right? Which included prominent businessmen, lawyers, and internationalists influenced U.S. foreign policy thinking and supported the post war international order. However, the primary decision making remained with elected officials and diplomats. So, in summary, wealthy families like the Rockefellers did not establish the UN. No, that was a sovereign state initiative led by the U.S. government and allies. They did, however, provide philanthropic and logistical support, right? Especially for the headquarters because they donated the land and had overlapping personal and ideological alignment with the internationalist goals of Roosevelt Truman administrations. This reflects the common pattern of public private cooperation in major U.S. foreign policy initiatives at the time. Claims of secret control often exaggerate this into conspiracy territory, but the documented philanthropic role is real and openly acknowledged. The reason why I wanted to bring that in this conversation is because you can see how this current conversation on reparations could be considered, you know, ideological. It can be because the Pan African movement is based in ideology. You either agree with it or not. And you have to agree with the ideology to go forward with the movement of Pan Africanism. Now, some people can say foundational Black Americans are an ideology. Are they? If people identify as a foundational Black American, they are identifying it as my people were foundational to this country. They were here prior to 1776, and they were a part of the foundation of building up the United States. That's kind of it. That's really not an ideology. Those are just facts, right? And you can trace your lineage back. I trace my lineage back to the freedmen, right? And it's in my gene pool. And even pre 1776, my people were here. Now, Shakur, that name, I'm pretty sure that's African, right, is in my gene pool. But going back, what country is that from Africa? I would have to further trace. I haven't gone that far, still tracing, right? But could I trace my roots back to the continent? Yes. To the country? Yeah. I'm not sure if I can trace it all the way back to the country. That would take some more digging. But am I connecting myself to Africa? No. I'm an American. There were people that were bought and sold, and they were put over here, and they were basically called the bastard children of Africa, and they were rejected by Africa. See, people don't want to ever talk about that dirty little secret, the DLS. That's true. The people that were bought and sold here were like, you're not Africans. You're dirty Americans. You are here, and your blood is tainted. You are no longer us. And I'm paraphrasing some of the conversations that have happened among African circles, but that's how we're viewed over here. Because we are a mishmash of things like I just told you. You know, Shakur, more than likely African name, that's on my mother's side. And she married William Newbill, known as Willie Newbill. He was an Irishman. But without that Irishman and without this African woman, I'm not here. But they were still both from another place, made their roots here, and claimed this nation as their home in America. So again, do we talk about ethnicity or do we talk about race? Black is my ethnicity. I'm a Negro. But they want to conflate the two to play the race game. Just saying. It's a broader conversation. But again, I am glad that the United States voted no with definitive reasons why they said no. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some more news. Thank you guys for joining me here on this Prayer with Friday, and we will see you on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. With the energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. I'm going to go through some of these comments. And Spud says, the gravest crime against humanity is American chattel slavery, which occurred on American soil if they came from Africa during the slave trade or not, based on race. It is an interesting conversation, but like I said, when you put that word gravest in there, then that's when you get into the struggle Olympics. Crime is crime, regardless of the level of it, right? And the fact is, are we going to acknowledge it as a crime? Going back to why are we acknowledging it? And what are we actually doing about it? Because I just read to you, some of these atrocities are still happening today. Right now. Beyond Skeptical says, have you ever listened to the English translation of Hitler's speeches? It's kind of stunning. I haven't. Chris says, the blacks, the Barbary pirates of North Africa used to kidnap the white Europeans and put them into slavery. The blacks are not innocent of being cruel and inhumane either. Not saying they're not. Like I said, I did not give an innocence pass. I'm just saying, when the United States voted no, they said at the time, international law, it wasn't looked at as a crime to just kidnap people or to sell them into slavery or to just move them, and just nobody was like, hey, like, you can't do that. No one was doing that. They were just kind of doing what they wanted to do. And again, they're still doing that today. Outside of human trafficking, there are still people being put in some type of slavery in different parts of the world. How is the world dealing with it? Just saying. It is a conversation that needs to be had. And Cajun Lady, thank you so much for joining us with your red, white, and blue hearts. And Spud says, why Ghana never came to get us back? True question and statement. You never came to fight for us. You never put an army together and said, hey, those are our people. You cannot have them. We want them back. But now we're having a conversation where we want you to acknowledge the harms that were had. Can you generationally find the ties? What is your lineage that spans from there to here? Is a bigger question, because lineage doesn't go into any of that conversation. It's just more of a broad conversation. We want you to acknowledge this harm. If you want somebody to acknowledge the harm, you have to give it a root and a start and a basis. Because we all know that chattel slavery happened. Nobody's discounting that, right? But the reason more so now is, why do you want to present this? What is your real end result that you're trying to get? And I know that they've outlined that in their charter, but again, that's the conversation that we're having. The UN was put in place to have these conversations, most definitely. But when you're trying to put it forward to a vote that's non-binding, it can be very telling, right? The way you vote, and you want to be able to, kind of pin people to it ideologically. Are they there based on ideology, or are they there based on peace and to maintain peace in the global community? That's the question. What's your job? Okay. Now let's get to some more of these updates before we get into our prayer with Friday. And this is Shirley, and she is talking about banks are under attack.
Everyone, due to the conflict in the Middle East with Iran, now they're threatening to attack U.S. banks and also major cities that are soft targets. Now, if they are attacking U.S. banks, it leads us to the question, is your money safe? And in this video, I'm going to break down what you need to do to protect yourself if these attacks happen to the banking system. Now, if you're new to this channel, I talk about credit. So if you like that kind of information, subscribe to the channel and make sure you go to my website and you can download this free heart inquiry removal package for free. The link is in the description of the video and in the pinned comment section. So here's what they're threatening and what's going on. So watch this.
I think that we can expect Iran to engage in 4 types of hacks that they've done before. Number 1, go after our banking system. Number 2, hack the systems that underpin our oil supply. Number 3, our critical infrastructure like water. And finally, mis and disinformation for our elections. They've done all these types of hacks in the past, and I think we can expect more like them in the future.
Jake Braun is a former senior counselor to the Secretary of Homeland Security, now head of the Cyber Policy Initiative at University of Chicago. Braun telling the I-Team one of his first events for the White House was traveling to Pittsburgh after Iranians hacked a water treatment facility in 2023.
Our critical infrastructure is quite vulnerable. They look for outdated systems that haven't been patched. They're weak spots.
We've already seen what Iran's cyber capabilities can accomplish, a country known for its ability to sow chaos with a few strokes on a keyboard. After Operation Midnight Hammer last year, designed to obliterate Iranian nuclear capabilities, Tehran-backed hackers targeted U.S. banks, defense contractors, and oil companies.
They have new AI weapons. So the investment for the secure infrastructure, there's no finish.
Jake Cho is a professor of cybersecurity at Lewis University. He says our deep reliance on networked systems for vital industries like telecommunications, water, and power creates efficiency. But
any vulnerability in software or firmware in any type of hardware, of course, it can lead additional vulnerability.
Braun says if they're not, businesses should be on high alert. In Springfield, the I-Team has seen firsthand the statewide Terrorism and Intelligence Center, also known as STIC, 24/7, analyzing threats, claims of bombs in public places, and the ongoing risk from foreign terror groups of domestic lone wolf strikes.
Iran and its allies have a long history of radicalizing individuals across the world, whether they be in the U.S. or Europe or elsewhere, and encouraging them to take violent action against soft targets.
Now, some of the highlights in that video where it was saying in that news clip that now they have some AI technology for cyber attacks to come against the banking system. So here's 3 steps that you can do to protect yourself. Number 1, make sure you keep some cash on hand. It's very good that you go out to buy a fireproof safe. And if they attack infrastructure, as far as lights, electricity, or banking, and you cannot access your accounts, you'll have cash on hand. Additionally, I'm a person that has a prepper mindset. So I always collect silver and gold assets just in case you really have issues with the banking system. I trade out my American currency, which is dollars, for gold and silver. So I get small gold and silver bars and American silver eagles, or you can get Canadian maple leaves, and you can also trade in your US dollar for things from the Perth Mint. Now, this is US money, and you will know this as a silver eagle being valued for $1. But right now, silver is really high price because the inflation that we're experiencing with the US dollar being printed. So this is a better store of money. And you know how expensive gold is now. So with silver, it takes $77 just to buy a silver eagle because this is real money. It's real precious metals. So it's a store of value. And I get mines from Quicksilver. So if you want to trade out your currency, they can send it to you in the mail, silver or gold, whatever you choose for the amount of money that you want. And you can even use a credit card and they will send you gold bullion every single month to your door. So if you want to check them out, I'll leave that link in the description of the video and in the pinned comment section. But a lot of people with that prepper mindset, just in case things happen in war, you have things to barter with. So that's also a good strategy to have cash on hand or things of value on hand for trade. Secondly, you want to have multiple accounts. So I would not just bank with big banks because they're going to probably be the first targets, but I would spread my money around like with local credit unions and those affiliations because they probably wouldn't be the first targets, more or less US banks. And when we had that incident that took place with Bank of America, which I am a Bank of America customer, about 2 years ago, they say that was a cyber attack from Russia. And we all saw our accounts zeroed out, and some people didn't have access to their bank accounts. Now, me, myself, I spread my money out. So it really didn't affect me because I had other places where I had my money. And another thing is having credit lines. So you can also have credit card lines just in case you cannot access your bank account for a couple of days because of a cyber attack. Now, if you have trouble credit and it's hard for you to get credit card lines with my elite credit system, my user, Sean, was able to go.
So that is something to make sure that we are aware of monies, especially right now, because we are still in this conflict with Iran. Just praying that we do not have boots on the ground, just praying that they bring our men and women home and that we can come out of this conflict, and definitely praying that Israel will settle down and stop picking fights with their neighbors. Just saying. Now let's get some updates from Promethean.
President Trump made clear that the discussions with Iran are real, and asked why he trusted the process, he dropped this bombshell.
Because they're going to make a deal. They're going to make a deal. They did something yesterday that was amazing, actually. They gave us a present, and the present arrived today. And it was a very big present worth a tremendous amount of money. And I'm not going to tell you what that present is, but it was a very significant prize. And they gave it to us, and they said they were going to give it. So that meant one thing to me: we're dealing with the right people.
President Trump is not only dealing with the right people in Iran, he's dealing with the right people in the region, the ones who matter in this conflict: Pakistan, the Gulf states, Turkey, and back channels into Iran itself. Now look at who is not in that room, who he is not dealing with. The United Kingdom, the European Union, NATO. Not only are they not in the room, but the British, the Europeans, and their insane green policies are literally out in the cold. And with them, their proxy war in Ukraine. But that's not what the mainstream media says. They say Trump backed down or blinked. That's the story they're selling. But what the media covers up, or what too much of the magosphere just doesn't get, is that Donald Trump has created a new diplomatic space. where nations and their real economies are the currency of the realm, not imperial manipulation. I'm Susan Kokinda. I've spent decades studying the empire's great game and how financial control, managed conflict, and energy dependence are used to keep sovereign nations in line. I know what the map looks like when the system is losing. And right now it is losing. So if you want to understand the transformation taking place in the world, like, share, and subscribe so you can stay in touch and we can expand our reach. Here's what I'm going to cover today. First, who is at the table as Trump works to settle the Iran conflict and the new diplomatic architecture it represents. Second, who is not at the table, why Europe has reduced itself to irrelevance. And third, Ukraine, and why Zelensky's frantic maneuvering this week tells the whole story. So who is actually doing the diplomacy to resolve this conflict? The Wall Street Journal told the story this week, and the roster is pretty remarkable. Foreign ministers from Egypt, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and Pakistan gathered before dawn in Riyadh last week to work out a diplomatic off-ramp. Egyptian intelligence opened a direct channel to Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Turkey worked the phones between Iran and Egypt. Oman carried messages on maritime security. And the president confirmed it himself, first in these remarks to the press.
We have very much in mind our partners in the Middle East. As you know, a lot of them were surprisingly hit, and I was surprised to see it, and so was everyone else, but they're very much in mind in the discussions.
And then the president acknowledged Pakistan's role by reposting Prime Minister Sharif's statement, which said, subject to the concurrence by the United States and Iran, Pakistan stands ready and honored to be the host to facilitate meaningful and conclusive talks for a comprehensive settlement of the ongoing conflict. Now look at that roster. Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, the Gulf states. All of these countries are members of Trump's Board of Peace, the architecture he began building with the Abraham Accords, and now operating at full speed under the pressure of a shooting war, while still lining up billions in investment for rebuilding Gaza. And that pressure is doing something else entirely, something the media is completely ignoring. Iran and its proxies in neighboring countries are being isolated and defanged. In early March, the Lebanese government banned Hezbollah and told it to turn over its weapons. Then the Palestinian Authority publicly condemned Iran and sided with Saudi Arabia. Did you catch that? The Palestinian Authority condemning Iranian attacks on Gulf states and reaffirming solidarity with Saudi Arabia. And Hamas, Iran's own proxy in Gaza, is now seriously considering a disarmament proposal from Trump's Board of Peace. The entire axis of resistance, rhetorical edifice, has crumbled. Iran's military capacity is shattered, its supply lines to its proxies are severed, and the leverage is gone. Unlike decades of managed diplomacy, which kept the region in permanent war, Donald Trump is doing what no one has been able to do for a very simple reason. He doesn't play the imperial great game. He actually wants peace, built on genuine economic development. Now, notice who is not in that room. No British Foreign Secretary, no European Commission representative, no NATO quartet. The players who dominated Middle East diplomacy for decades are simply absent. And in terms of the military conflict itself, they are worse than absent. They've been AWOL, and the president has publicly called them out on it. Now, if you want to understand the magnitude of this shift, how the old strategic geometry of globalist institutions and ideologies is being replaced by American principles of statecraft and real economics, then you should subscribe to Promethean Action's free newsletter. This is big history, and we're going to give you the roadmap. The link is in the description. So why are Europe and Britain irrelevant at this table? Because their own policies have collapsed their economies and have stripped them of any leverage. That was noted with not a little bit of irony by Kirill Dmitriev, the head of Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund and one of Putin's chief interlocutors with the United States. Here's how he put it. Europe can finally enjoy the success of both its green and Russophobic agendas. No oil, no gas. This is not a taunt. That's a statement of physical fact, which even the Telegraph admitted with the headline, Europe facing fuel shortage within days, warns Shell boss. The EU built its entire post-Russia energy strategy on the assumption that Gulf LNG would always flow because the City of London had always managed those checkpoints, just enough to let Europe's green fantasy be semi-functional. That assumption is gone. And here's what makes this the empire's worst nightmare. It's not just that the strait is disrupted. It's that there are now two energy superpowers who have decisively broken from the green agenda and the rules-based order, and they're not shy about it. Here's Donald Trump this week posting the numbers on American dominance in fossil fuel production.
I'll pause there, and I do apologize. I did play this yesterday, but I wanted to play it again just as a reminder of what is really happening. Right? We're going to get out of this. We got to pray that we get out of this, right? Okay, now, and moving on. This is something I've been wanting to play for a couple of days, and I've just been putting other news articles in front of it, but I got to play it.
College, just go to a trade. You're not even in a trade. You're telling people to go into a trade. You're not even in a trade. As a matter of fact, some of the people telling you that have a college degree. Do you notice super rich people never tell their kids to go into a trade? You notice that? Super rich people always send their kids to college, and they always send their kids to prestigious colleges. My biggest issue, and this is completely aside from the like college is a scam thing, because that's fucking stupid, but my bigger issue with the whole you don't need to go to college, you can go to a trade shit, is you're acting as if those two things are substitutes. They are not. They are completely different pathways that will lead you to completely different outcomes in life. It's not a matter of like, oh, you don't have to do one, just do the other. That's not how it works. You go into a trade, you become an EMT. Somebody else goes to college, they become a neurosurgeon. Not only are those two different jobs, those are two different lifestyles. Those are two completely different pathways in life. The big one I hear is you can go to the trade, become an electrician, or you can go to college, become a fucking engineer, and make 3 times the amount as the highest earning electrician. You could go into a trade and learn HVAC and make a ton of money. Or you can go to college and become a fucking aerospace engineer. Like, it's just, people speak about them as if the two can be replaced. They cannot.
I'm not really sure what the argument is here. If she's saying that, the problem with this is that she's framing it as a versus, right? She's looking at it as you should, and I'm assuming because I haven't done any research on a girl in general, and I'm just reacting based off of real time, looking at it like you guys are looking at me, right? Is that she's making it like a versus. It's like a college versus a trade. You know what I'm saying? And everybody is not going to be a neurosurgeon. Let's just keep it 100. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody is not going to be a physician. It's plenty of people that go to college every single day and they got $100,000 in student debt, can't pay it off, and they're saying, oh my God, I can't believe I went. It depends on the curriculum. It depends on what you go to. All engineers are not built the same. There's different types of engineers, the software engineers, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, prompt engineers when it comes to AI. So you have to evolve based off of the changing ways. And neither one of them are better than the other. It just depends on what your long-term vision is for it. I know people that have sold their plumbing companies for millions, like tens of millions of dollars, and then they pivoted into just investing and going into a completely different thing. I know people that went to college and became lawyers and never actually leveraged their law degree to do anything meaningful, and they just sitting there with a bunch of debt.
Yeah. Facts. And the thing that I wanted to share with you guys and bring up really quickly is, and this was my question to ChatGPT, it's kind of funny. I said, based on the video, do you think trades will win out since the HVAC trade will be called upon to fix the air conditioner in the aerospace that the aerospace engineer can't? Really? Because see, the aerospace engineers study to be an aerospace engineer, not to fix the air conditioning. But they're going to call the HVAC guy to fix, you know what I'm saying? So you're still going to need this person. We need both. The difference is the debt ratio, right? It's going to cost you a little bit more to be an aerospace engineer. And also, the potential to have your own business. Somebody that becomes the HVAC air conditioner trade person, right? Let's just say that, can start their own business and hire other people to go out and do that work till they are no longer doing HVAC themselves. They're hiring people out for their company. So there is entrepreneurship with HVAC, where with an aerospace engineer, that is a specific industry for a specific function. Okay. That, yeah, maybe you could be an entrepreneur as an aerospace engineer and hire other aerospace engineers, but you would need to look into that, right? So they have, again, they're two different pathways. So I said, yes, trades like HVAC are winning out for a huge number of people right now. And your exact point about the AC repair nails why. Okay. So why are trades pulling ahead for most people in 2026? Demand and security. HVAC jobs are growing faster than average, 6 to 8% projected through 2034 because of massive shortages. Everyone needs heating and cooling, same with electricians, plumbers, etc. Aerospace engineering is slowing. It's slower, 3 to 5% growth. That might be due to AI, I'm not sure. So money with way less risk. So HVAC, their median income is 60,000. Some sources say 70, but experienced tech, those doing commercial work or business owners, easily hit 80 to 160,000 with overtime, side gigs, in their own company, right? No 100,000 student debt hanging over them, right? Aerospace engineers medium is higher, it's about 122 to 130, but you're looking at 4+ more years of school plus debt plus competition. So the pool is smaller, you have more competition, and you have more debt. Where HVAC, there's really not a lot of competition because they're building more houses. They're still going to need more HVAC people. It is what it is. It's a numbers game, right? So fast start and entrepreneurship, trade school apprenticeship equals working and earning 6 to 18 months. Many tradespeople own businesses and sell them for millions, right? College grads and safe degrees often start at 45,000 to 55,000, buried in loans. Yeah. So the old college equals rich, trade equals loser, snobbery the woman in the video is pushing is dying. Skilled trades are out earning a ton of college grads right now because of shortages and zero debt. AI can't crawl into your attic or diagnose a refrigerant leak yet. They can't, right? Physical essential work like HVAC is booming because even though your refrigerator says, hey, you're out of eggs, you still are going to need somebody who knows how to fix the refrigerator to fix it because AI can't fix itself. It's not self-sustaining right now. So there is that, right? And there is that. I just had to bring up that comparison. I'm like, oh my goodness. Now I wanted to get into the SAVE Act a little bit, and let's get an update going. Now there was another conversation that happened in Ohio. It's more of some drag things that are going on. I might have to hit that Monday, but I wanted to play this video.
Act. It's being sold as a way to improve election integrity, but in reality, it could keep millions of Americans out of the voting booth. Under this act, you'd have to show proof of citizenship in order to register to vote, and every time you wanted to update your voter information. For most people, that means a passport or a government-issued photo ID and your birth certificate. But here's the deal. This bill could make it significantly harder for trans folks in particular to register to vote. Here's some stats for you. 1.3% of US adults identify as trans. That's about 3.3 million eligible voters. And according to a 2015 survey, 89% of transgender people don't have their name and gender that match all of their legal documents. Why? It is incredibly hard to change your birth certificate and your government IDs to accurately reflect your name and gender. And the Trump administration is making that only harder. Real talk, the SAVE Act is not about election security. It's about blocking eligible voters from voting. The trans community would face a lot of obstacles if this bill became law, but so would rural Americans, poor Americans, and Republicans would also be disproportionately impacted. We can't let this happen. Speak up, push back, tell Congress to protect your right to vote. Have y'all heard about...
Okay. Really? Stop that. Um, if you need your birth certificate, you can request one online, right? The people that it's going to really impact, and this is just my opinion, right? It's going to impact people who are not born here when it comes to a birth certificate, even if they're naturalized, right? It's going to affect them. But if they're naturalized, they do have access to their birth certificate and it is in a database. Why? Because they're naturalized. They had to go through the process and it is a formal process, period. You don't just get here and then be like, hey, you're naturalized. That's great. No, they've pretty much gone through a 5 to 10 year process to get naturalized here in the United States. So there's that. The trans community is going to have an issue because if you were born as Bob and you try to show up as Susan to vote, it's not going to work, right? Because you don't match your birth certificate. Not anybody's fault nor problem. That is your personal decision, period. Period. It is your personal decision to identify as another gender, which you cannot because you're never going to be a man if you were born a woman. You're never going to be a woman if you were born a man. Period. It doesn't work that way. Just because you cut off some body parts, add some body parts, and say, I'm this now, it doesn't work that way because biologically you can't produce what is at birth. Okay, a woman will never produce sperm, so a woman can never become a man. A man cannot become a woman because he's never going to have a uterus with ovaries and produce eggs, period. That's it. Not trying to hurt anybody's feelings out there, but biologically, that's it. Outside of that, you're believing something that isn't true. I just laid it out. It is what it is. Now, if you want to vote and your name is Bob, it was Bob on the birth certificate, Bob's got equipment, you can't show up as Susan and try to vote. Now, could there be documentation to show that, hey, I was born as Bob, I now identify as Susan? Biologically, there have been some updates, right? Here's my paperwork showing biologically the updates. I can't change my birth certificate. Can I still vote? Now, that's going to be up to the person that intakes you because it still comes back to your birth certificate being origin, matching your current driver's license or passport. Because again, how are you traveling? How are you getting around? Bob. And I'm just using the names as examples so we can have, the conversation. If you were born as Bob and now you're Susan, what does your passport say? How are you traveling? How are you going on a cruise? Not to be funny, I'm just saying. You're different now. How is this working? Because at the end of the day, you're still going to have the proper documentation to travel, to do what you need to do to get it done. So the SAVE Act, just to give everybody a quick update, it's weird. So when you look it up, it says Veterans Accessibility Advisory Committee Act of 2025. You're like, what is that? Well, it's still the SAVE Act, because summary says Safeguarding America Voter Eligibility Act or the Save America Act. Can't make this stuff up. You saw it. I'm just saying, you saw it. It says this, but it's really this. Okay. So the actions that have happened, there have been 99 actions on this bill. Where we're at right now, it's passed through the House. Okay. Passed the Senate, it's passed the House. So I guess it's on its way to the president. We'll see. It had, let's see, cloture amendment not invoked in the Senate by yay, nay vote. They got 53 yays, 47 nays. And that recorded vote was, I guess, the 73rd vote that they had. Okay, that was vote number 73, and that was as of the 26th. That was as of yesterday at 1:07 p.m. The motion was rejected. They still haven't gotten this done. Now, remember, President Trump said he's not signing anything unless it's a SAVE Act. And we're still dealing with the government shutdown, by the way. Oh, sorry. I'm not sharing my screen with you guys. Just real quick. Yeah, so here's where we're at. And here's the latest update on where we are at. It was vote number 73 as of yesterday at 1:07 p.m. and they voted to still reject it. And I don't see the problem that people, the excuse people keep trying to make. Oh, women are going to have an issue. People are going to have the issue. Okay, there are roughly 3 million trans people that are going to be affected. Yet you are going to be affected. Nobody told you to make this decision. Nobody forced it upon you. Okay, you decided to do this, and nobody should have to capitulate to, accommodate you either. Okay, I'm a married woman. My name was changed. I had to go through Social Security. You know why? Because I wanted a bank account in my legal last name, which I decided to change. And so I had to go through the process of going to the Social Security office, getting my Social Security card updated. Why? Because that triggered everything else. I had to go in there with my birth certificate, with my marriage certificate, and say, hey, I just got married, want to change my maiden name to my new married name. And it was all good. And we were done. And that was it. Now, for somebody getting married, it's typical. Get your last name changed. But for somebody who says, I am a totally different gender, which is believing something that's not true, because you cannot truly change who you are. You can't. Biologically, you can't. A woman, again, will never produce sperm. A man will never produce ovaries. Biologically impossible. It just doesn't work that way. Even if you were to do a transplant, it just doesn't work that way because your body doesn't function that way, period. So stop believing things that are not true. That's where we're at. Okay. All right. And with that, we are going to get into our prayer for Prayer with Friday, because there's a lot to pray about, you guys. So, God, thank you so much for today. Thank you so much for everything that you're going to continue to do and everything that you've done. We are so, so grateful for our lives that you've given us. Right now, the world is in conflict, God. There are so many conflicts going on, especially in the Middle East. We are praying for the brave men and women that are there. We are praying for the lives that have been lost and the families that have been left behind. And we are praying for peace. God, we are praying that you just keep people safe, Father, just to see the bombings that are going on. And people don't think about the individuals that are on the ground. Whether you agree with them or not, life is precious, Father, and we're praying for protection for all individuals that are there. We are praying that this conflict gets resolved as soon as possible. God, we're praying for your hand to be upon our world, Father, and to save us from ourselves, God. Again, we're thankful and we're grateful for everything. We're so grateful just to come before you, Father, and I'm praying for those that are going through an identity crisis, I should say, with the gender ideology. Father, you made us perfect in every way, and you didn't make mistakes. As you made each one of us, we're all different. We definitely are. But you made us perfect even within our imperfections. And I'm praying for those that, don't like who they are and don't like the way they were born, to really come to terms with who they are and love themselves, Father, because to want to mutilate yourself to be happy isn't somewhere that anybody should be in. So I'm praying for them. I'm praying for their hearts to be restored, God. And as we go into this new beginning, going into Saturday and Sunday, Father, just to get a little bit of rest and refreshment, Father, I pray that we can keep our hearts and minds focused on you. It's in Jesus' name we pray, in your Son, Yeshua's name. Amen. So with that, you guys have an amazing new beginning, and we will see you on Monday for the Monday recap. So remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.